The pen clicked twice, and the room went quiet. He remembered the smell first, a mix of stale coffee and paper that had soaked in the weight of too many family endings. He sat in the old leather chair that groaned when he shifted, palms pressed flat against his knees so he would not wring his hands like a child. The attorney adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and began to read the will. He had promised himself he would not react, that he would listen like a professional, detached, unshakable. That promise lasted until he realized his name was not appearing. Not in the first paragraph, not in the second, not even in the small sections where people leave odd trinkets and forgotten coins in the pockets of memory. It did not appear at all. Everything went to his sister and his brother. The house, the savings, the antique dining set their mother polished before every holiday and every argument. The backyard shed that still smelled like their father's tobacco and motor oil. They had divided the pieces of a life between themselves like they were splitting a restaurant bill. He received nothing. It was as if he had been erased from the story the moment the ink dried. His sister signed quickly, efficient as always. She tucked her hair behind one ear and said thank you to the attorney as if she were accepting a package. His brother leaned back, easy smile, a man who had won a game he had not played. Neither of them looked at him. He kept his face calm, and when the attorney asked if he had any questions, he said no. The office hummed with the sound of the ceiling vent. A clock ticked behind him. He opened the door himself and walked into a hallway that smelled like lemon cleaner and endings. In the elevator, he stared at his reflection in the dull steel doors and tried to feel the right feeling. Anger was there, yes, but it was crowded by something heavier. It was grief with edges. That house had raised him. It had known his footsteps from the time they were small and careless until they were tired and late. He could still picture the way light fell across the kitchen floor in the morning, the long rectangle of gold where his mother stood with her coffee and her lists. He could still hear the stairs creak on the fifth step, the step his father promised to fix and never did. And now it belonged to people who had stopped loving it the minute the paperwork made it theirs. He drove past the house that afternoon. He told himself it was a coincidence, that he had simply taken the long way home, but his hands turned the wheel before he could lie to himself again. The porch sagged a little more than he remembered. The paint on the rail had blistered like the skin of an old apple. The lilacs his mother planted were arm-heavy with bloom, purple and sweet and a little wild, as if they had grown beyond the neat borders she once kept. His sister's car sat in the driveway like it had always belonged there. The front door was open and the screen door held the summer air. For a moment, he could almost hear the house breathe. He parked at the curb and watched it. A neighbor watered his lawn and waved, not sure whether to recognize him. He lifted his hand and then put it down. He did not walk up. He did not knock. He sat with the ache of being a stranger in the place that had made him. It was a clean ache, sharp enough that he could use it. That was when the idea settled. It did not arrive with a trumpet or a vow. It slid into him the way a calm does, like a lake when wind gives up. He did not want a share or a fight. He did not want explanations or apologies because explanations are often smaller than the damage they try to cover. He wanted the house. All of it. Not because a paper said he should have it, but because love had already written his name on its walls. He went home and pulled out a notebook. The first page he wrote the word why, and under it he wrote 3 things. Because it is mine in the ways that matter, because they will not care for it, because I will. The second page he wrote the word how and left the rest of the page blank. He understood that wanting is a spark and plans are wood. Without wood you only burn your fingers. He needed patience. He needed facts. He needed time to work on his side like a quiet partner. The next morning he began with numbers. He searched recent sales on every block around theirs, wrote down prices, square footage, days on market. He called the assessor's office and asked simple questions about property taxes, about upcoming reassessments, about forms and deadlines. He spoke to a contractor friend and asked what a roof like theirs would cost if it had finally decided to fail. The friend gave him 2 numbers, and both of them were big enough to make a throat go dry. He wrote them down and circled them. Numbers are not personal, but they are persuasive. He started showing up, not as a ghost, but as a relative who had not learned how to let go. He brought muffins one Saturday and asked his sister how she was settling in. He noticed the gutter that had pulled loose in the last storm. He asked if she had a ladder. She did not. He asked his brother on the phone if he planned to visit soon. His brother said he was swamped and asked if the house was holding up. He said it was charming and old in the way that requires help. His brother laughed and changed the subject to a new restaurant in his neighborhood. He kept his voice light and his notes heavy. Memories tried to distract him. The third time he stopped by, he walked through the side gate, and the smell of cut grass lifted every summer of their childhood at once. He saw their father in his sun hat, pushing the mower in slow, neat lines. He saw their mother shucking corn, salt on her wrist where she rested her hand after boiling water fogged the windows. He stood in that flood of remembering and made a rule for himself. No decisions from nostalgia, only decisions from clarity. He would not beg for his place. He would earn it. His sister was already tired of upkeep. He could see it in the way minor tasks piled up like undone homework. The porch light flickered for a week. The hedge swallowed a foot of the sidewalk. The kitchen faucet leaked with that polite tap-tap that sounds harmless until it sounds expensive. When she complained, he listened and did not solve anything fast. He offered names of professionals and said phrases that money hears, like lead time and back order and supply chain. He did not lie. He simply let the truth do its slow work. Old houses are brave, but they ask for respect in cash. At night he lay awake and let his plans stretch into shape. If they chose to sell, he would be ready with an offer that felt like relief. If they tried to rent it, he would be there when tenants became headaches. If they clung to it out of pride, he would let time and invoices teach what he could not. He was not racing them. He was walking with the house until it leaned back toward him. He drove by again on a rainy evening. Water slipped off the roof in silver sheets and pooled at the base of the steps where the concrete had cracked into a fine web. The window above the sink glowed a tired yellow. He pictured a pot on the stove and a person stirring because the motion is easier than choosing. He whispered something he had not said out loud. He was coming back, not as a visitor, as the one who keeps the light steady. On his table the notebook waited. Under how he began to write in small, careful lines. Track market. Watch repairs. Be present. Be patient. Offer when they are ready to hear it. Do not bargain against yourself. Keep the house whole. Keep yourself calm. He closed the notebook and held it a moment like a passport. The ache in his chest did not vanish. It moved over a little and made room for resolve. They had excluded him with a signature. He would include himself with a plan. And plans, when fed with time and facts and the willingness to do quiet work, become keys. He could already feel the weight of them in his pocket, not yet metal, but close enough to make a promise. The weeks turned into months, and with each one the cracks in their ownership widened. His sister, ever the perfectionist in her own life, quickly discovered that an old house demands attention on its own terms. A pipe burst in the upstairs bathroom during the first frost. She called him, frantic, because she could not get a plumber to come until the following day. He drove over with a toolbox, shut off the water, and helped her mop up the floor. The tiles were loose under his feet, waterlogged. She kept apologizing, saying she never knew it would be this much work. He told her old houses are like old people. They have personalities, moods, and needs that cannot be ignored. She laughed a little, but he could hear the tired edge in it. Meanwhile, his brother's involvement was almost non-existent. He lived 2 hours away, busy with his job, his new condo, and his weekend trips. He enjoyed the idea of owning part of the house, but not the responsibility that came with it. When bills arrived for repairs or taxes, he would delay sending his share, claiming he was sorting finances. His sister would grumble to him about it, saying she was tired of covering his part and waiting for him to reimburse her. He listened and nodded, planting the seeds of how much easier it would be to let go of something that had turned into a burden. Every visit, he noticed more signs that the house was wearing them down. The garden their mother had once kept neat was now wild, weeds pushing up between bricks, the roses untrimmed and sprawling. The fence was leaning toward the street like it was tired too. Inside, there were little neglects, a stain on the ceiling from a leak that had been scheduled to be fixed for weeks, a cupboard door that hung crooked, a draft in the living room they tried to block with a rolled-up towel. One afternoon, while his sister was venting about the latest repair quote, something about the chimney needing reinforcement, he asked, casually, "Have you thought about selling?" She sighed, the kind of sigh that comes from thinking about it more than once. Sometimes, she admitted. But this was Mom and Dad's. It feels wrong. He nodded, understanding, letting the thought settle without pushing. Behind the scenes, he was preparing. He met with a real estate agent he trusted, asked for a private estimate of the house's value, and talked through scenarios for buying out both of them. He tightened his own finances, cut back on luxuries, and saved every spare dollar. He even explored quiet financing options, personal lines of credit, small loans, anything that could be lined up in advance without drawing attention. He wanted to be ready the moment opportunity knocked. And then, winter hit hard. Snow piled against the porch, ice clung to the gutters, and the heating bills doubled. His sister called him in January, voice tense, to say the furnace had broken down. She was waiting for a repairman, wrapped in blankets, boiling water on the stove for warmth. He offered to help cover the cost, but he could hear the frustration in her voice as she said, "It is one thing after another with this place." His brother, unsurprisingly, said he would chip in when he could. That was the moment he knew the house was already halfway his. Not legally, not on paper, but an inevitability. It was wearing them out. And when people are tired enough, they stop fighting. He increased his visits, always helpful but never overstepping. He brought groceries when he knew she was busy. He shoveled the walkway after a snowstorm. Each time, he looked around, silently cataloging repairs, estimating costs, and calculating how much longer they would put up with it before the idea of selling felt like relief. The break came in early spring. His sister called to say they had been talking, she and his brother, and they were considering putting the house on the market. "It is just too much," she said, her voice a mixture of resignation and guilt. He kept his tone neutral, told her he understood, and that they should do what was best for them. Inside, his pulse quickened. A week later, over coffee, he made his move. He told them he was interested in buying it. He kept it practical, no emotional appeals, no mention of childhood memories. Just facts. He was ready to buy outright. No agents, no delays, no uncertainty. He laid out the number he could offer, fair but slightly below market, framing it as a quick, clean solution that would save them fees, showings, and months of hassle. They looked at each other, weighing it. His brother asked if he could close fast. He said yes. His sister asked if he would keep the house as it was. He said he would take care of it. Within days, the papers were being drawn up. When the pen finally hit the dotted line, he felt the same stillness he had felt the day he decided to make this happen, the calm before a lake moves. The keys slid across the table toward him, cool and heavy in his palm. They were not just metal. They were proof that patience works, that quiet plans have power, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply taking back what was always yours. He drove to the house that evening alone. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the porch. He unlocked the door, stepped inside, and closed it behind him. The air smelled faintly of lilacs and dust. His footsteps echoed in the empty hallway, but it did not feel empty. It felt like it had been waiting. And this time, he was not leaving.